Welcome and thank you for joining us today for this powerful webinar. Sorry, we were having some technical difficulties, um, but thank you for being here with us today. This webinar is going to be about one's experiences former foster youth and homelessness, and basically the youth's impact as they try to pursue their college degree. The goal of this webinar is to address the academic barriers of foster and homeless youth that they face while they're trying to pursue their degree, how having the lack of adequate support can enhance their ability to succeed. And we also want to talk about some effective ways that advocates and supporters can help youth achieve their educational goals. We are happy to have you here today. Thank you for being with us. For those who don't know, my name is Raquel Wilson. I am the Youth Voice Program Manager here at FMC, and I also will be your moderator for today. Just to provide a brief background about myself, I was also in foster care for 7 years, and I emancipated at the age of 18. Since then, I have dedicated my work to not only inspiring former foster youth to share their stories, but to just advocating for foster and homeless youth and supporting the community that I once was a part of. And so it's a great pleasure. I believe that this topic is very important because I am someone who also struggled with homelessness while I was getting my bachelor's degree and my first master's degree. And so, just having being able to provide a space to have a conversation to possibly help educate someone and help provide guidance to someone else is really good. So again, thank you guys for being here for this conversation. So this webinar has been brought to you by Foster and Media Connections. And just to share a little bit about Foster and Media Connections, Foster and Media Connections is a nonprofit news organization that harnesses the power of journalism and media to improve the lives of vulnerable children, youth, and families. We report and produce our own coverage, which is published on two distinct platforms, The Imprint, a daily news website, and Fostering Families Today, a bi-monthly print magazine that is dedicated to helping so foster parents, foster guardians, those supporters. And so it's a very great magazine. And so in addition to Foster Media Connections, I run our Youth Voice program, and we inspire both current and former foster youth through various projects like this webinar and journalism training. And so just a little bit about the Youth Voice program. FMC's Youth Voice program began in 2016 as a journalism training program. We support young people with live experience in foster care, juvenile justice system, as well as youth have experienced homelessness. Most recently, we have placed a high emphasis on higher education. FMC also trains youth involved in child welfare, juvenile justice system, and teaches them how to produce journalism so that they can have more prominent role in the public discourse that shapes policy and ultimately their lives. The inclusion and application of the youth perspectives is critical to fostering media connection, and it also helps us achieve our ultimate goal, which is to inspire foster youth and inspire youth. And so thank you for that. And so just next, we're going to, before we introduce our panelists, I want to just go over what you guys can expect for today and a little bit of the house rules. And so that we're going to allow the panelists a chance to introduce themselves, and then we're going to seg immediately into our our discussion. I'm going to ask our panelists, Tatiana and Ivory, and Dr. Kizzy Lopez, some questions just to, provide more education and more insight on their experiences dealing with the subject, and just helpful ways to help someone else get through the process as well. We're going to open the floor for open discussion. And at that time, everyone who would like to either share their experiences or their expertise or ask any of us any questions will be allowed to do so. Just to be fair, we ask that everybody keep their responses to a 2-minute minimum. And please use our raise hand feature so that you can be unmuted to speak. I will let you know when your 30 seconds is out. And if you would like to speak, we will first answer the questions in the chat first, and then we will get to the questions from people who would like to speak. And so our house rules for the day is, of course, we ask that everyone be respectful and active and practice active listening. This presentation is being recorded. It is important to note. So if you do not want to be recorded at this time, you probably should turn off the video and just listen in. And then so also we will save the questions again for the end, and we will answer the questions that's directly in the chat first. During the open discussion, everyone have 2 minutes to speak. And so now we're going to have our panelists, who are also our FNC's newest Youth Voice contributors, Tatiana and Ivory, share a little bit about themselves. And it's important to note that this webinar was, they both played a significant important role in putting this webinar together. Is actually a part of their contributor role curriculum. And so, yeah, special shout out to you two for helping be the creative minds to put this wonderful topic together that we are going to be speaking about today. So thank you, Tatiana and Ivory, whichever one of you would like to go first.
Hi, I can go. So my name is Ivory Bennett, and I am a Youth Voice contributor, and I'm super excited and grateful for the opportunity to do so. I'm also an English teacher and a cheer coach. I'm in my classroom right now, so forgive me if I look a little distracted. There's a lot going on in school. I'm also a graduate student at Concordia University, and I'm pursuing a master's in education administration with a principal certification as well. And I graduate in a few weeks. I'm a dually accredited educator, so that means I can teach high school and college level English courses too. And please check out my LinkedIn if you need to know anything else about me. Thank you for having me, Raquel.
Thank you so much, Ivory. And Tatiana.
Hey, Raquel, I think Tatiana's having some technical issues logging in, so I think I'd just move on to Kizzy to intro herself.
Okay, perfect. Well, before I give Kizzy the opportunity to introduce herself, I just wanted to give her a special thanks. Dr. Kizzy Lopez is one of my former mentors and still is my current mentor, I would say, from Fresno State. She is one of the people who I believe played an important role into not only helping me get into Fresno State, but being one of the support systems that made sure that I graduated. And so she offers a lot of expertise dealing and advocating with foster youth and those who have dealt with homelessness. And so introducing Dr. Kizzy Lopez.
Thanks, Raquel. That's sweet. Yes, thank you so much for having me here today to share on a topic that I'm so passionate about. Just a little bit about my background. So my name is Dr. Kizzy Lopez. I am an assistant professor in social work at Fresno Pacific University. And for those of you who don't know where Fresno is at, it's in the Central Valley of California. I've been an assistant professor there for 2.5 years. And my research looks at the practices and policies that support students who have lived experience in foster care and their ability to stay in college and graduate. Prior to this current role as an assistant professor, I started the Renaissance Scholars Program back in 2008, and Raquel was one of my first students, and started a campus-based support program for students who had lived experience in foster care at the university. And so I had the great privilege of being the program coordinator there for 10 years. And so really love that job. It was my dream job. I got to meet so many remarkable young men and women, Raquel being one of them. And so it's nice to come full circle and do advocacy work together, Raquel, and to meet these other amazing advocates. For those of you who don't know, I also have lived experience in foster care. And when I attended community college, I was also homeless. And so that's why I pour a lot of myself and my work into supporting young people who've been in care and pursuing higher education, because somebody helped me along the way, and the best thing I could do is to pay it forward. So Thanks again for having me today, and I'm excited to have this conversation.
Thank you, Kizzy, for sharing with us a brief, history of your background. And again, thank you so much for being here with us. I literally just like sent the email like, "Can you help me?" And she was available. So I appreciate you, and your work just goes it isn't going unnoticed. So thank you again. And so now we're going to just segue into the questions. Tatiana, our other panelist, seems to be having some technical difficulties, but no worries. I'm going to just ask Ivory and answer some of the questions myself to bounce off, and then Kizzy, whenever you would like to chime in for those for these, you are more than welcome to. And so Ivory, I just kind of wanted you to start off by sharing a brief history of your background dealing with foster youth, being a foster youth, a former foster youth, while you were going to college, and how that impacted you.
Yeah, so I forgot to mention earlier, I spent 17 years in foster care in Western Pennsylvania. I've been in kinship care homes, I've been in non-familial family homes, I was in one shelter, and I did experience a bout of homelessness when I was in college, but it feels insignificant when compared to some of my peers that I know who were also in foster care. Looking back, especially being at a point where I could potentially start to work at a college now and I could be someone's professor. Looking back, college was terrible. And I felt like because I was one of the foster youth who didn't cause a lot of noise, I was always responsible and I was always independent. I didn't have the support that I needed, I feel, first and foremost, to take advantage of the scholarship opportunities available to me. So I feel like I could have graduated with so much less debt than what I have now had I taken a full ride at a different college or university. And this was unfortunately a few years before they started giving foster youth full rides to public universities across the country. And so there's the first part. I think back all the time, like, where was my help when I was in high school? And just because I was an A student or I was a good student or I was a quiet kid, that doesn't mean that I didn't need help or guidance. I feel like I didn't have a champion showing me and guiding me the way. And I just see how that could have made a difference financially and setting me off on the right foot. And then once I got to college, I went to the University of Pittsburgh for my undergraduate degrees. And it's an amazingly large school. There are about 40,000 people per for the first 4 years. And so there were about 10,000 people in my class, and so I just got lost in the sauce. It was just a lot of like trying to figure it out. And there are too many kids for people to really latch on to you and take you under their wing and mentor you unless you're just that kind of person who would just go out and socialize and really advocate for those kind of relationships academically. Um, at the same time, I feel like because I went to such a large university, there were more opportunities for me to experience things. There were more opportunities for me to have a diverse experience with people and with other students and with other professors and with all of the things that I could have studied or experienced. Um, but overall, I felt like I lacked a lot of mental and emotional support while I was an undergrad. Um, so sorry. One second, I'm so sorry.
Well, thank you, Ivory, for beginning the brief summary. But while you're on pause, I can just share a little brief history about my experience dealing with foster care and segueing into college. So I emancipated 2 weeks before my 18th birthday. And so when I turned 18, I already was out of the system technically. I was sleeping on a friend's couch, and I was actually getting ready and just waiting to have one of my other mentors bring me up to Fresno State. But for those 2 weeks, before I went to school, I was pretty much homeless. I remember like 4 of those days, I had to sleep outside on like a park bench, and like I've experienced having to like, I always try to be very kind to people who identify with being homeless outside, because, as embarrassing as it is to say, I had to, experience the, thoughts of having to eat out of trash can because I didn't have, food during those transitions. It was like I got kicked out of the system. And then I went to college. I was waiting to go to college, and those 3 weeks were like, up in the air basically. And I didn't have a family support system. And so, it was very, very hard. And when I went to college, I felt like that I still was living in, like, mentally, I was in college. I'm a grown woman. Got my first apartment, but mentally, I was still, 15, 16, this young adolescent girl yearning for someone to, tell them that they're doing good, and that, that they're willing to help. And so, throughout my first year of pursuing my undergrad degree, I was homeless. I remember having to rely on the Renaissance Scholars Program to help fund some rent money that I couldn't pay, after, being nice to a parent. And so, and I got evicted, like, so I've dealt with all of that. And even pursuing my first master's degree, I dealt with being homeless too as well. And you kind of just have to keep moving, especially when you know that if you quit or you give up, you like literally have nothing to fall back on. Like if I did not graduate from Fresno State, I wouldn't have had nowhere to go. Like Fresno State was how I was able to live, how I was able to, have food, consistent food. And these are things that I didn't have. Remind you, growing up in placement, you're moved around a lot. Well, I moved around a lot. You sometimes don't know where your next meal is going to come from. And often you have to go hungry. So, transitioning to school, I still was in that mindset, and it was very hard for me. And that's why I always say I'm grateful for Kizzy, because, without her help, I probably would have been one of those, that started and didn't finish. And so, yes, that's just a little bit of brief about myself. And so with that being said, Ivory, how do you think, with the experiences that that we go through in order to transition into school, what are some things that you think academic supporters could do to, help with the transition, with the application process, with the filling out the financial aid? They ask personal questions about your parents' history, and often I was sad when I was filling out that, because I didn't know. And so,
Yeah.
those things are, important, and they kind of hurt you, as you're growing up. So what were you say are some things that supporters could do in terms of, helping the beginning process?
Yeah, so I think that we need to be proactive instead of reactive, right? And so I think that like this whole discussion of post-secondary education for foster youth particularly has to begin in ninth grade at the very latest. And I feel like you could even start it in middle school, because if students identify as wanting to be able to do this, or if they just have the capability to do it and they're not sure that this is a choice that they want to make yet, I think we do them a disservice when we don't position them to do that and to do it well. I think that when we think about academia, when we think about higher education, it's all about preparation, right? And so I think that for foster youth, especially, they need to have a person who's dedicated to their academic health and well being. They need to have a person who's going to be able to identify their strengths and weaknesses and help them to grow wherever it is that they need to grow. They also need to be aware of all their options and their choices. While I love higher education, it's not always the best choice for everyone. And it's not always the best financial decision either. And so we need to be honest, and we need to be direct with that, and we need to be supportive of foster youth, and not only giving them what they need to succeed academically in high school before they get to college, because what they do in high school is going to dictate their opportunities for higher education. But we also need to give them the experiences of the other possibilities. You know, I know people who they don't have degrees. They might not have even finished high school, but they're making much more money than a lot of people who have bachelor's degrees or master's degrees. And so I think we need to be really honest about that. And we need to work from a strengths-based perspective instead of trying to force feed college onto every student. Um, Educationally, there's a big buzzword about social emotional learning. And I think that like what we're talking about here today in terms of juxtapositioning that with homelessness is a really important aspect of it. I did experience homelessness, but it wasn't as severe as you, Raquel. And it doesn't negate that it was homelessness, right? It doesn't negate that I was a child under, a ward of the state without an appropriate place to stay. Um, but I think it just goes to show you that these students who experience foster care, whom we know are especially vulnerable to having poor life outcomes, the ones who actually get into college and try their best to stay there, they need to be supported. Like where are their supports? Where's the system that's going to say, you're in college, you don't have to worry about working extra jobs. You don't have to be an RA to have somewhere to stay. You can just be a student and that's going to be enough and we're going to support you. I think that on the college level, when students get to college who experience foster care, there needs to be some kind of organization on each campus that is not mandatory for people who have foster care experience, but it is available and it's readily available and it's visible for people like me who might not have had the emotional or financial support of a stable family unit, right? Might not have had the experiences, the people don't realize how much just growing up in a household where people have gone to college puts you at a higher playing field than growing up in a household or not having parents who have gone to college. Um, and so there are things that my peers, they knew just because their mom and dad had been to college. Their mom and dad and their grandparents and their great grandparents, they all went to Pitt. And my mom, she went to the psychiatric unit down the street, and so she didn't go to Pitt. I didn't have that background experience, and unfortunately, I didn't have foster parents who were supportive of me either, in terms of really championing me and pointing me in the right direction for what it is that I wanted to do in life and what I could have become and wanted to become. So we need to have a support group on campus. We need to destigmatize foster care. We need to destigmatize mental and emotional health and well-being as well, because I think that this is another component of experiencing homelessness and of experiencing foster care as a college student, right? And I think we need to really re-examine the stipulations and the requirements of foster youth in terms of what they have to do and be and give in order to get support from the state. So I was in independent living until the age of 21 when they kicked me out, but I didn't graduate at the age of 21. I graduated at the age of 24. And so for 3 years, I had to figure out, how do I get health insurance because I have a chronic illness? How do I maintain my housing? And even if I have housing, I don't feel secure about it because I've never felt secure about my housing in my entire life. Who do I call when I have real life experiences going on? My birth mother, she almost died when I was in college. That ruined my whole year. It put me behind an entire year. And I felt like I had no one to talk to or no one to support me through that experience. I was in an unhealthy relationship with another foster youth. No one was able to provide me any assistance, any support, any guidance as to how to get out of an unhealthy relationship and still be okay. And so all of these factors, I feel, while they do make us stronger, right? And while we are more resilient, how much further could we be had someone just given us housing? Had someone just extended a hand and said, here, let me help you with this. Here, there's this resource. Here, you need a break. I'll pay your bills. I'll pay your food. I'll pay your phone. Whatever will make it better, whatever I can do to help you. How much further would we be in life by now? That's all I'm saying. That's what I constantly think about and reflect on. So yeah, I hope that answered something.
Thank you, Ivory, for answering the question. And I think that it's important for everyone to note that Ivory is in Texas, where even through my own personal research, especially at the universities, I actually made like calls to some universities, and they don't have like an adequate foster youth support system as our universities and Cal States do. And so with that, excuse me, I would like to ask Dr. Kizzy Lopez a question, because she is someone who worked with Renaissance Scholars, a program that is dedicated to helping foster youth on the college campus. She was very important, vital, like very, she provided a very important, pathway for me to, be able to finish school. And so, Kizzy, with the academic barriers that you have come across with working with Renaissance Scholars and with other former foster youth who have experienced homelessness, what have been your personal methods that you have used that you believe work that you could possibly provide to another educator that probably may have never considered it?
Well, to be fair, I was part of a campus-based program. So yes, I did start it, but an integral part of Renaissance Scholars were campus partners, like with housing, mental health, financial aid. And so to maybe touch on some of the things that Ivory talked about is the stigma. Let's start there, the stigma of being in foster care. So one of the things that happens a lot of times when young people from foster care or those who are experiencing homeless and unaccompanied have to go to a public contact window for financial aid and disclose very private information. So one of the ways in which education, particularly financial aid, can support these young folks is to create a liaison position or a point of contact. So that was one of the things that we had in Renaissance Scholars, is that there was an identified liaison in financial aid, and students could talk to this person directly. They could email her. They could go to the window and ask for her. And if students simply said, I'm a Renaissance Scholar, then they knew, the other financial aid counselors knew who to refer that person to. The other thing I think is important is to have a point of contact on campus. So for many years, that was my role. I was a point of contact. And I remember, I didn't know all the answers, but if a student came to me, I was going to be a campus advocate and we were going to figure it out. And I think having that person to go to, like Ivory talked about, is really important. I think the other layer was that I was someone who also experienced care, but older than the students that I was serving. So I had worked through some of those challenges and was hopefully able to help students navigate life a little differently than what I did when I was younger. Just to give you some context too, in California, almost all the CSUs, I believe all of them, have a campus-based program for foster youth. All the CSUs do. And I think almost all, maybe a few of them don't, but majority of the community colleges have campus-based support programs. And a study, I think back from 2012, showed that foster youth who participated in a campus-based program were 3 times more likely to graduate college than those who weren't. These programs serve as a catalyst to really help students who are on the edge of maybe not graduating, right? That particular person, resource, could be the difference between that student who's having a difficult time staying in college and just working, and just staying the course, because it gets really hard. And I would say, even with a campus-based program, even if a program has a full ride scholarship, the road is still hard. Like, you cannot replace parents. You cannot, we cannot erase the trauma that young people have experienced. So with all the resources that are provided, it's still a hard road to go for young people. But I think with the right support, it makes it manageable and it makes it possible for them to see the finish line. And I think also the other part of having role models is very important, very critical. I mean, I did not see anybody like me when I was younger. And so I think I'm very public about the fact that I've been in care and now have a doctorate and I'm a professor and I do research, not to brag, I'm not, some well-known, professor or anything like that, but I share it only to inspire and support other young people so I could be a role model. Whatever you want to do, you want to own a business, you don't want to go to school, but whatever it is, if you set your mind to it, you can do it. And so I think everything that I've ever learned in research boils down to people matter, relationships matter. We have to have people in place to support youth when they're going through K through 12 and also in college and also in adult life. I'm 43 years old. I still have mentors that are helping me figure out the next stage of life as a woman of color, as a woman that has, difficult relationships with my biological parents and trying to navigate that. So yeah, there are a lot of good programs throughout the state. And I see that someone put California College Pathways, great resource to find different college programs. And if I could say one last thing, if you are an educator, I think the responsibility is not always on the youth, and it is not always on the practitioner. There are institutional assumptions around the idea of what's called family privilege. So institutions assume that students come into the institution with family privilege. And family privilege is an invisible set of assets that a young person is born into without any earnings, right? You're born into the family that you're born into. And with that comes a set of privileges and assets that are invisible to people, but it gives you safety, sense of belonging, it gives you connection. And so I would say that, campuses and colleges need to actually look at their practices and structure. For example, when students come into campus, there are things around housing that could be modified. I know it happens in California, but it doesn't happen across the country, to give foster youth and homeless youth priority consideration in housing, to let them stay during the winter breaks without any additional charge. There's a very popular thing called Family Weekend. That needs to be renamed. When you go to university orientation, it says, oh, and your parents in a parent session, we need to use language that's much more inclusive, like a guest, right? There are simple things that we can do to make institutions much more inclusive of language. And it's just not for foster youth, it's for immigrant students, international students, dreamers, DACAs. The lack of family privilege that people experience is on a spectrum, right? It's on a spectrum for foster youth, and it's on a spectrum for a variety of vulnerable populations. And I would say the responsibility is not always on the practitioner and the student, but institutions really need to take a look at their own practices and be much more inclusive and informed about the idea of family privilege and the impact that it has on vulnerable youth.
Thank you so much, Kizzy. That was a very great response. You actually answered the next question I was going to ask in terms of, is it best for foster youth, homeless youth, those who experience incarceration, to select certain institutions. And so just to chime in a little bit about that, I do agree that there are institutions that offer support to foster youth, and although there's not a lot of support as many universities and institutions that we would like to be, I think that it's important that those who identify with foster youth, being a foster youth, those educators and supporters, advocates, foster parents who help their college, potential college student apply to these different institutions, that they consider the fact and look into the campus and see if they do have support groups that support foster youth, see what type of different advocacy programs are available, and that should be something that plays a huge role into what school they go to. And so I'm not sure how I would have been able to handle college if it wasn't a program like the Renaissance Scholars Program. I definitely know that I wouldn't have survived, because I lived on survivor mode my entire, life. So when I came into college, it was, academics and surviving. It wasn't none of those other concerns, were hard to think of when you're concerned about where you're going to eat and where you're going to sleep at. And so those safe places, those universities that provide those safe havens, that allow students to stay during the winter break, especially with, dealing with COVID, and all of the displaced foster youth who, had to figure out where they were going to go, during the experience. And so, I think that it's very important. And as youth are applying to these different colleges, that they should consider the programs that's on the campus. And so, thank you, Kizzy, and thank you, Ivory, for sharing that response. And so, Ivory, the next question for you is, so describe some of the best practices that you think foster youth, parents can take with helping their student transition.
Yeah, so I think that the first thing is to pay attention, right? Pay attention to your students' grades, have communication with their teachers. And again, in terms of being proactive instead of reactive, we're going to start this in high school or even middle school, right? So that we can have our students be on the right foot. The second thing is give them an opportunity to explore. I feel like something that's overlooked with foster youth is that we often don't get the experiences of exploring and trying new things. We don't get to have dance classes. We don't get to try different kinds of sports. We don't get to just try things. And it's through that exploration where you learn about yourself and you learn about things that you could potentially be happy doing or studying in an institution of higher education. And so, if there are opportunities to give foster youth chances to explore, I would highly encourage that. And I'm speaking from the perspective of a teacher. Also, speaking from the perspective of a teacher, please be on top of your kids' grades. Like, this is your foster child. Please be on top of their grades, be in communication with their teachers. Teachers want kids to succeed. So, just creating that partnership and that open respect and communication is going to be, it's going to make a world of a difference. And then I just feel like giving them the opportunity to see different things. So what does it look like for someone who has gone to college? What kind of life are they living? What does it look like when you get a master's degree? What does it look like when you get a doctorate? What is that whole process and experience like? So showing kids the real lived experience, like, hey, like this is Dr. Kizzy. She was just like you. Like, and here she is. She's awesome. She's amazing. I think kids sometimes need to see in person, in flesh, like real life people who aren't celebrities necessarily, but real life people making things happen, who look like them, who have the shared experiences like them. And just from what I'm seeing and experiencing as a high school teacher, like it's that real life connection, that real life person who can make all the difference and be a huge monumental influencer in the lives of students and in their trajectory as students. So I hope that helped.
Thank you. That helps a lot. And so, just getting into the conversation about trauma, because I feel like that is a necessary word, often used to, place a stigma over us, so to speak, I would say. I believe that automatically, you hear foster youth, you think trouble teen, trouble youth. You hear foster youth, you think, all of these negative assertions. I was told a lot of different things. My mom and my dad didn't love me. All of these different things that these people assume about you, just because you have this foster care label over your head. And so, I feel like that trauma is not necessarily assessed the correct way that is supposed to be assessed, especially when we're speaking about students and their mental state, and therefore a lack of, and briefly before, I had mentioned, me being 19, 20 in college, and how I still, was living in the 15, 16-year-old mental state, because I still was in survival mode that entire time in that experience. And so, Kizzy, I wanted to ask you, through your experience, not only witnessing, the traumatic impact that this plays on students, and, possibly their ability to achieve, how do you think that, what are the best steps that you think that students, supporters, parents, guardians can take to, you know, help them get up and feel motivated, to encourage them to finish school, to when you have no one to look at in your family, like how am I supposed to, you know, turn and look at my mom and be like, well, you didn't finish school, so how are you telling me to finish school? You know, like you have no examples in your household of someone who was successful, or someone who owned their own business, or someone who, you know, took the college route and got a PhD. I'm the only person in my family who has a bachelor's degree and 2 master's degrees. And like Kizzy says, that's not something to brag about, but you know, it makes me feel great that, you know, I get to tell, you know, tell these stories and look at other foster youth and be like, hey, you know, when I was graduating, only 11 to 13% of foster youth graduated from college. Only 1% graduated from university. And the statistics for former foster youth who go on to get master degrees and PhDs are, those numbers are so low. And so to be able to be like, hey, this is what I did and I had it hard and you could do this too. How do you think, what do you think is the best method to take in helping someone, you know, scale through their traumatic experiences, and what advice can you offer to educators, parents, and supporters, you know, to help make that transition those conversations and about that transition a little bit easier?
Yeah, thanks for that. You know, if I'm speaking to educators, practitioners, and uh, you know, foster parents, I think what Ivory mentioned about having role models are really important. But one thing I would caution folks on is this idea of just because this person did it, you can do it too. And the reason I say that is because everybody's journey is so different. Can you do it? Yes, but the comparison can actually be really dangerous. And people have different levels of capacity, and people's experience and relationship to their trauma is different. And so I think really kind of just meeting people where they're at. You know, I've had the privilege of working with hundreds of students over the years, specifically in higher ed, who have been in foster care. And every student is different. Every student has their own unique story and journey and capacity for dealing with their own trauma. And so I'd say, listen, one, believe that they can go to college, find out what the resources are to support them. When they're experiencing trauma, one of the best pieces of advice I can give you is to learn about the impacts of trauma. So prior to getting into this field, I didn't know about it, and I learned a lot. So when students would get out of pocket, I had to realize it's not about me, it's about their trauma. And I can't de-escalate a situation or a student if I'm escalated, right? And so I think really learning about trauma and the impact helps informs you as a practitioner, and you learn not to take things personal so that you can deal with the student in a healthy way. And so the other thing I would say is, regardless of your background, we all have our own junk and our own trauma. Before you start working with young kids from foster care, deal with your stuff, deal with your own junk, because I've seen too many times where it becomes this really kind of vicious circle where adults' junk comes out on youth. You know what I'm saying? And so deal with your own junk, deal with your own trauma, learn about trauma and how it impacts young people so that you're not escalating them when they're in a traumatic situation and acting out. And know that everybody has their own journey and their own story. And while we want to use people as role models, we want to be really careful not to compare and compare each other's journey, because that can be very discouraging. On one hand, we think it's encouraging, but it also can be really discouraging for folks too, because then people start looking at timelines and look at how much this person achieved when you really don't fully understand someone's full background and the impact that it has on them. So those are my few pieces that I would say. I had a lot of students over the years are like, man, it's taking me so long to graduate, or look what this student's doing, look what this alum is doing. And I'm like, don't even look at those other folks. You have your own path and your own journey and your own gifts, right? And so I always kind of put an asterisk by role models. Role models are good, but with an asterisk. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Kizzy. Yes. And I most certainly think that I'm one of those students that you had that conversation with in terms of not finishing on time. I did not finish in 4 years. It took me almost 6 years to finish my undergraduate degree. And at times I definitely felt discouraged, especially during those times when I was sleeping on my friends' couches and trying to figure out where I was gonna, have my things and etc. And just going through life's like experiences, during that time, I definitely felt discouraged, and now when I look at it and it's like, you spent, 6 years, getting your undergraduate degree, but you did 2 masters in 3 years, so, at the end of the day, I feel like I still have something to be proud of. And just the fact that I started something and was able to finish it, which I'm sure, a lot of I'm so sorry, which I'm sure a lot of foster youth can appreciate that. And so at this time, we have just one more question and then we're going to segue into our open discussion. I just wanted to ask Ivory and Kizzy, just going out to share offer up two coping mechanisms that youth can use if they're dealing with any traumatic experience while transitioning into school and going through school, whether that's homelessness, whatever the case may be. Offer up two outgoing pieces of advice that you would like people to take with them.
Dr. Kizzy, would you like to go first, or do you want me to go?
Either way, I just want to make sure, is the advice for the youth or for practitioners, or who's it for?
I would like for you to offer advice to the students themselves.
Okay, I'll go ahead. I'll say therapy. Anyone who's been through trauma needs therapy. I personally feel like it is a great, healthy way to cope with adverse experiences and to build those skill sets, and to just have someone who will support your mental and emotional health and well-being. And that's something that will extend well beyond any academic experience. And so therapy, I would say first and foremost. And then secondly, I would say speak up, advocate for yourself, ask for help, even if you feel that that person can't give you help, they might be able to point you in the direction of someone who can. Remain in contact with your caseworkers and the different families who have extended support and love and grace to you while you were in care. You never know the help that they could offer you, the support they could offer you. And just believe in yourself. Like you're capable of anything it is that you want to achieve. So believe in yourself no matter what.
I think Ivory nailed it. That's what I would say is, therapy, therapy, therapy. I think I'm a huge advocate for therapy. I'm 43 years old and I go to therapy every week. People think somehow you've arrived, you've got this job, you got this degree. Life will kick your butt. Life will kick your butt. And so I think staying in therapy is good practice for every human. You need someone to talk to. Doesn't mean that you're weak or there's something wrong with you. We all need someone to talk to. And so I just echo with a loud voice what Ivory said around therapy. To add to the other things that she said, which I wholeheartedly agree with, one of the things that I notice with students in particular that learn to navigate college really well is their ability to ask for help. It sounds like such a simple thing and it's hard to do, but those students who ask for help, it makes all the difference. My dad, he's gone now, but he used to say, closed mouths don't get fed, right? And so you have to just ask for help. Find someone you know, find someone you trust, and ask for help. And just like Ivory said, they may not be able to help you directly, but they can point you in the right direction. So if I have 2 pieces of advice for college students, ask for help and keep going to therapy. Your investment in your well-being will help in every other facet of your life. And I just want to note that there's lots of great resources in this chat here. So big thumbs up to that. I see the chat's really active and lots of great resources. Yeah, good. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you both for providing the answer to that question. And just to add to that, I would say that it's important that you be a victim, but not be a victim. And when I say that, I mean that you rely on people to help you because of the circumstances that you've been in, but you never get comfortable. You always want better for yourself and you go after those resources. I think one of the things that was really good that worked really well for me is that I know like that I hated asking for help, but I never was afraid to ask for help in the last moments. Like when it was like, but one thing about me is that I felt like I was like a cat. Like I literally had 9 lives, and every time I lose a life, another one to come, and I just be bouncing back, like my back against the wall, ropes. I'm gonna continue to fight, and so that would just be the advice that I'll leave with the students as we close out this panel. Is just to stay encouraged and to keep fighting. The fight is not over. We probably will deal with issues, you know, as we transition into our older adult life. But it's up to you to, you know, navigate through those mental traumas and, you know, identify or find someone who, you know, can possibly help you overcome those obstacles and those different things that you went through. And so this will conclude our panel discussion. I want to thank both you, Ivory, and you, Dr. Kizzy Lopez, for answering our questions and just, you know, being just genuinely pure in your responses. I'm sure that it means well, especially to someone who, you know, may be going through the same things right now or may need this this webinar to, you know, better help someone out. And so thank you guys both. So at this time, I would like to open up the floor for anyone who would like to ask myself, Ivory, or Dr. Kizzy Lopez questions. If you would like to share your experience and or your expertise in hopes to help advocate. At the end of the day, it takes a village. And although we are the ones, you know, moderating this webinar, we always want to leave an open space for other people to share their experiences in hopes of, you know, it might be able to provide some healing. And if I can, you know, help one person get that out, then I feel like I did my job for the day. And so with that being said, please keep your responses to 2 minutes or shorter, and use the raise hands feature if you would like to ask a question.
So I'm going to go in order of how these came in initially in the beginning of the webinar here. So I'm going to let Paul speak first here. He had his hand raised first. So Paul, we'll be able to hear you. I'm not sure if it'll give you video or what. So here you go. So we should be able to hear you now. Paul?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
we can. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Hello? Hi. First of all, I just want to commend all of you. Unbelievably informative, inspiring, reality check. You're really just extraordinary human beings. And thank you for your leadership and the lived experience and your spirits of triumphing over unbelievable, challenging torments in life. Anyway, so I've been an advocate for foster youth for about 25 years. First with Public Counsel Law Center, then with the Neighborhood Legal Services, and then now with the Human Trafficking Legal Network. And of course, that time I built relationships with a lot of people who are advocates for youth and also those who have resources. So there's an amazing partnership we have with Judge Jerry Sobel, some of you may know, in Los Angeles. She's a retired children's court judge, just heart and soul advocate for foster youth. I also serve on the board with Georgette Todd, who I believe is in the audience and alerted me to this seminar. On a group called Angel's Nest, which provides opportunity housing to foster students during college, along with wraparound supports. And then most importantly, I recently became connected with an old friend who worked with homeless and runaway youth. They weren't called homeless back in the 90s. They're called street youth or runaway or kick or throwaway youth. And youth did not identify as homeless. But in any event, he runs the thing called Change Reaction, which is an incredible resource that's designed to address a lot of the needs. I think it was Ivory was specifying during college that were a source of frustration because she does not have the family support to provide those kind of items, you know, whether it's co-pay for medical appointment, simple things like paying for toothpaste, transportation to get to a critical event, maybe not be able to buy a college book or textbook or something you need for online learning. First and last month's rent when you have an opportunity to get an apartment with a friend, but you don't have the ability to contribute to make that possible. So it's called Change Reaction, and it's been helping. For example, we recently helped a stranded foster youth in Louisiana who had applied for college, was disconnected from his attorney, who was able to help him get on AB 12 benefits, but the disconnect of 3 months left him stranded with no resources. So Change Reaction, we communicated the need to them, and they basically paid for $2,100 for first and last month's rent, for transportation for a month, for food and clothing and basic needs, and the money he needs to get the books to begin going to class online. So this is a resource we're literally just beginning to test, but all of you are incredible opportunists to connect with a network of former foster youth. You see the need. I gave you my number. You can text me. What I'll do is put you in touch with other people who he calls change agents. They're closer to where maybe you live or where you're working, but getting somebody who can be kind of like your angel or champion to play the role that an absent family is not there to play for you is pretty much what they want to do. And the most important thing they respond to is like the example I gave of one-time needs that are urgent that will help you get through a crisis. Those are specifically the types of things they want to fund, and it can be typically up to $3,000 per request. And it's phenomenal. We right now I'm working to take those benefits to shape a foster placement for a 12-year-old who is going to be put in a group home because the family situation was not big enough for her to live in. So we're basically going into the home, arranging appropriate furniture and spacing to make sure she can move in with her relatives. That would not have happened had it not been for Change Reaction. So again, we're just beginning to explore the impact we can have, but it's all about impact, and each of you are impact players in your lives, and you're seeing the need. The critical thing is to know that there is a lifeline of support you can now connect with, that we can help connect you with. And ultimately, we'd hand it off to you where you can begin making the request directly to Wade Trimmer's, the name of the man who's in charge of the requests. But right now, they need to spend $6 million. We're talking about substantial resources that need to get out the door. They want credible agents that can identify the need and help direct the resources to the need. They usually will pay directly to the vendor, the landlord, like if your car breaks down, they'll pay the mechanic. Books, they'll pay the university. That's generally how they work. But the main thing is you are equipped to be the change agent in your arena and networks, and I can just help make that connection for you. So I gave you my number. Again, thank you for being inspirations. You give me hope. I'm an old man, but you young people give me hope. And you're such great ambassadors for other foster youth. So keep your fires burning.
Thank you so much, Paul. We really appreciate you offering that information to us. And I will definitely be reaching out to you. Thank you so much.
Next, we have Kadesha here. So let me just allow her to talk. We should be able to hear you now.
Okay, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, first, I want to thank y'all for talking. I just wanted to share my experience. I am a former foster child myself. I now have a nonprofit called the Angel Nest Incorporated. So my goal is to actually open up a transitional home for kids who age out of foster care. When I left foster care, I was 15. So I didn't age out, but I still have a little sister and a nephew that's in foster care now who is about to get adopted. And I feel like a big thing regarding foster care is therapy. When I came home, my self-esteem was so low. I wanted to commit suicide. I wanted to run away from my family all over again. And I didn't want to go to college. So I'm now 22. I am a single mom. but I am in school to become a social worker. I had a wonderful experience in the foster system. I still talk to my foster parent till this day, and that was 9 years ago. Um, I just feel like, I don't know if it's a lot of African Americans on here, but this is not just to them, but it is a book called The Unapologetic to Black Mental Health. And that book helped me. Like, I cried reading that book because it was speaking to me. So, and I also felt like I see my peers that I went to school with, they was graduating. I'm like, that could have been me. Like, why am I not graduating? But like Dr. Kizzy said, you cannot compare yourself to others. So like, I just wanted to say, if there's a will, there's a way. Keep pushing. I don't know who's all on here, but just stay motivated. That's all.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. I definitely would like to be in touch with you and see if we could, possibly get some stories from your side. So thank you so much for just joining and being with us today. And I appreciate you for sharing your experience with us.
So now we're going to have Tanya. You're going to be talking next. We should be able to hear you now.
Okay, are you guys able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, if you hear some background, somebody talking in the background, I am at work. But I also would like to say thank you for having me on this call. This is the second one I've been on. And when I tell you, like, you guys are the definition of putting me on the right track. Like, I was someone in, I believe her name is Kadesha's story. So I actually aged out of foster care, and I actually aged out of it this year. So for us in Minnesota, we have to be 21. And when I tell you I experienced it, I experienced homelessness too, but mine was more through like the middle school years into high school, just because I was adopted. And let's just say they were not good people. So being able to sit down and be able to like share my story and have people outside of just Minnesota hear me definitely plays a big part. I do want to say I did have someone of the better end of the bargain than a lot of foster care youth. I had my runs of very crappy social workers. I promise you. Oh, let me tell you the stress. Okay, it was the stress for me. And I met one, and she kind of rolled it out with me for my last couple of years. And like, she was like a mom to me. She was kind of the person that was like, I was never in your situation, but I have an idea of what you're going through. And I'm gonna let you test your waters, and I want you to come back to me with like the lessons. So because of her, I kind of always took like every day as a life lesson because of that. I am too also going to school to become a social worker. I am in 3 degrees. So I'm for criminal justice social worker, and I just added human relations on as a minor. Don't ask me why I did that, but I was already taking so many classes for it. So I was like, a couple of extra classes wouldn't hurt. And I do too hope to have the dream to open up different foster or group homes in transitional homes, as I was in group homes myself, with me being a runaway and stuff like that. So I do want to say one of the biggest things for me that helped me was therapy. I did have to find my inner peace, but I do know that I had a thing for like, if you didn't help me when I needed to help, I kind of just stopped, taking the help at that point. So I want to say I didn't go to therapy for about 6 years. I took a pause from it. I'm like, I'm not ready. I'm just now getting into school. I'm trying to get my life situated. Like, I'm trying to take in all these resources from all of these people. This is like all new experience to me. This is, this, that, and the third. And once I got back into it, it actually helped me kind of sort where my anger and my hurt was coming from. And it also helped me open the platform of like, okay, so how do I start, moving around? How do I start moving forward from this? I'm going to heal eventually, and I'm still healing, but I can't rush the process. So I feel like one of the biggest things for me is I wanted to work in the environment where I feel like it's not going to make me a lot of money. No, but will I feel better knowing that I helped a lot of people? Yes. Because quite frankly, you guys are definitely doing some things that I want to do. I definitely want to be able to hop on Zoom calls and talk to people about what's going on, because for a while I did feel alone, and I don't feel like that was fair. So stepping on campus, I did have to advocate myself. Like Dr. Kizzy had said, you don't have that family privilege. So a lot of things that I did not realize, because every kid, I want to be an adult. So the one thing I did not realize that was going to be hard for me. It's something to tell people, like, I'm more like God. I have to, if something falls, it falls back on me. It doesn't fall back on somebody else. I can't turn to somebody else. I don't have that option. So can you work with me because of that? I feel like that still is one of those things where, you know, if I get a call and it's like, well, why don't you ask somebody for help? I can't do that. I don't have that luxury. So I want to become that person for somebody else. So that's why I chose the field that, you know, I'm going down in. That's why I'm trying to, you know, work the way I am. But yes, I would love to continue to reach out to you guys, because these are somewhat things that I do want to do. I do want to be able to hop on Zoom calls and get more involved, since this is my career that I'm going down. And I feel like this is best. I feel like the people who have gone through it make the best people to have these type of jobs, especially because you have a lot of experience that not a lot of other people have. So you're able to educate. So I definitely want to keep in contact with everybody, because this is amazing. Like, you guys, this is my second call, and every time I'm just like, you know what, period. That's facts right there. That is 100%. That's, you just spoke the truth. Look, period. Tell them again. I'm definitely one of them people, because you guys do that. And having that type of thing, that kind of just gives me the reassurance of like, you're on the right path. You're doing the right thing. You got other people that are looking at you. So yes, I definitely want to be looking into everybody's program. So if you guys are a part of like nonprofits or programs or anything, if you could drop them in the chat, because I'm going to screenshot them and like look at them a little bit later, I would actually love that. And I would love to continue to reach out to you guys and have conversations like this, because look, it's a part of my healing process. And let me tell you guys, I need it.
Thank you so much for sharing. You always made me teary-eyed, and I try not to cry on these type of things, you know, but I'm emotional these days. But thank you so much for sharing. I think that is very important that you you know, that you want to work in the field in which you identify with, like myself, and I'm sure we all kind of have things in common. So I'm going to drop my personal email in the chat, and if anyone would like to reach out to me, you guys are more than welcome to learn more about any of our upcoming projects, any more webinars, our journalism opportunities. I'm available. And so was there anyone else that wanted to ask any questions, Talia?
We have one more. So we have two more actually. So we have Robert and Dee. So let me just, Robert, we should be able to hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. First, I just want to say thank you so much for getting on today and you know, speaking. I'm always intrigued when I hear people, you know, kind of speak about the challenges that they had as they were going through the education system. But one of the things that was said by Kizzy was just like, you know, stop comparing yourself to other people. I think, especially during a pandemic where all you seem to have is endless amounts of time, I think we get into a situation where it's like, oh my God, I see all my friends who, you know, were also foster youth doing all these great things, you know, and you kind of start to kind of get down on yourself like, well, how come I'm not doing those things? You know, you have this want and your desire to do it. So for example, I have my bachelor's, but I really want to go get my master's. And it's like, it's killing me because I'm like, I don't know why I can't seem to get it together enough to do that. And, you know, they say the comparison is the thief of joy. So that was just something that was said that really resonates with me. And like, I don't know how you guys have ever dealt with that, or like how you get out of that mindset, because I know it's not a good mindset to be in. You know, like I'm still in my mid to late 20s, so I know I still got the rest of my life ahead of me to go back and get my degree and figure out what it is I want to do. Like, I think I want to get my MSW. I think that sounds fun. It sounds like something I'd be interested in doing, because, you know, I'm a huge believer of you can't be what you can't see. And I just don't see a lot of Black male social workers. So I think there's, you know, a market for that. You know, so it's just, I don't know, that just really resonated with me. And I think I needed to hear that today, because I need to stop comparing myself to other people, be thankful for where I am, but also know like their journey is their journey, my journey is my journey. And I think they're both valid places to be in. So I just want to say thank you for lifting that up. And then also, if there are ways you found to get through that block of like focusing on other people's lives, not your own, I would be all ears for that. Take a picture, I don't have camera.
Actually, I'd love to respond, Robert. Thank you for saying that. You know, one of the things that I've actually done is got off of social media. Even as a 40-year-old woman, I see other scholars. It's hard not to compare yourself to see when other people are doing stuff. And I thought there for me, my own situation, social media was causing more harm than good for me, because people always put the best version of themselves out there, and that's not the whole picture. And so one thing for me is like maybe taking a break from social media. Sometimes that can get overwhelming. So for me, two things: social media break and therapy, for whatever that's worth. Those two things have really helped me.
So I'm gonna promote D here to talking. So I think we should be able to hear you now.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi, peace and blessings. My name is D Ranks. I'm from Los Angeles, California, and I'm also a former foster youth. I just had my 33rd solar return. So I emancipated when I was 18 years old. And yeah, like there wasn't as much, programs and resources and things that I hear on this call today. And I definitely appreciate, being invited to get on the call. But most definitely, like, if anybody's on the call and, if they're like second guessing and thinking if they should, like, definitely take advantage of it. Because I'm definitely an example of what happens when you don't. Yes, I emancipated at 18, but I was like excited to get out there and just run out and do my own thing, and I ended up getting in trouble. I was ignoring counseling. I was not going to my therapy sessions even when I was a foster youth, and it made the road much harder than it should have been. But we live and we learn and we grow. And I just wanted to say thank you. And my medium for coping was through the music. So I really did channel everything in my experiences through my music, and that definitely helps and still helps to this day. But I'm 33 years old and having to consider therapy and so on and so forth because I ignored it when I was a child from 6 all the way up until still now, So I definitely appreciate being invited on this call and take advantage of all the jewels that was dropped. Blessings.
Thank you so much for sharing with us. Talia, was that the last question or was there any more?
That was the last raised hand. So I guess final call if anyone wants to raise their hand. All right, it looks like we're good on questions. Oh wait, we have one late person here. All right, so Jeanette.
Okay. We'll let Jeanette be the last person to go.
Hi, sorry about that.
No worries, we can hear you now.
Thank you. So here in California, I work in the state assembly, and I was just wondering, well, first of all, thank you all for sharing your stories and for what you've been doing to advocate for foster youth and for yourselves. I'm just wondering, in terms of legislative actions or ideas, is there anything that comes to your mind about this law should be changed or this law should exist to help foster youth transition into higher education or access higher education a lot smoother?
Hi, Jeanette. This is Dr. Lopez. I don't know if it's possible. I would love to connect with you even after this call.
Sure.
About like possible state legislation. I have worked in the past on a couple of bills for higher ed for foster youth, and so would love the opportunity to just have a conversation with you if you'd be open to that.
Absolutely. Yes, and I did write down your email, so I'll send you an email and we can find a date to connect.
That would be great. Just off the top of my head, and this is not necessarily low-hanging fruit, but and it has to do with financial aid. So a lot of the programs, when they give students emergency fund money, that money gets counted against students, what's called their cost of attendance. And if you were a student, like my biological children, my son's about to go to college, if I give him $50 emergency money because he's short on rent or groceries, that doesn't count against this cost of attendance, but it does for young people who are solely reliant on financial aid. And it makes it difficult to where they're capped out at a poverty level with financial aid and in terms of getting assistance from the schools. Another thing is that particularly in California, there's been a lot of legislative movement around supporting young people in foster care and community college, which makes sense. They're three times overrepresented. But now students are starting to transition into universities at a higher rate. And so making sure that there is a state and institutional dollars to sustain these university programs. So the university programs are reliant on donors. And in times of economic crisis, these programs kind of go up and down, and there isn't a steady stream of support for foster youth who are attending universities at state colleges, depending on their funding sources. So maybe looking at steady streams of funding to ensure that there is a steady stream of funding for foster youth in the university setting.
Okay, thank you.
I have a lot, so let's talk. I have a lot.
Definitely, I'll follow up for sure.
Okay, thanks.
Well, thank you for that amazing question. I believe that there definitely needs to be a lot more consideration of foster youth when laws and some of these policies are being passed. And I would love to offer some of my suggestions too as well. And so I'm available as well. And so I just wanted to, in response to this powerful webinar, offer you guys the chance. If you would like to see more youth voice stories like these, more webinars like these, more opportunities for us to offer journalism training and contributor roles like the one that Ivory is currently a part of, we are offering a news match, a donation through news match, and until December 31st, all donations will be doubled. We are going to drop that donation link in the website, and it just pretty much helps support our continue to help support our program. We pay our foster youth for the foster youth, the homeless youth, and the youth who have experienced incarceration. We pay them for the stories that they provide us, and so this just helps to go along and support that, support our overall mission of the Youth Voice program. And so if you could donate, that would be really, really great. And we're doubling donations too as well. And so thank you. And so I just wanted to take this time to not only thank Ivory for joining and being a part of this wonderful conversation, but Dr. Kizzy Lopez, thank you so much. Not only have you been an inspiration to me as someone that has helped mentor me and guide me, but I'm almost positive that you have done that for multiple people. And being here today, it already seems that just having you here has offered a more sense of value to this webinar and to this discussion. And so just thank both of you guys from the bottom of my heart for being here. Shout out to Talia, who's in the background helping with the technical difficulties and technical stuff, responding to all the people in the chat. We appreciate you and we value when you help us with our webinars, Talia, over here at Youth Voice. And so lastly, I just wanted to thank everyone who decided to share their experience or offer up a level of expertise or advice today. These webinars are important because we want to continue to keep providing an open space for people to feel encouraged to share their stories. You know, maybe myself, Ivory, or Kizzy speaking today could possibly help someone on the call, you know, be a little bit more, you know, sincere when they're and delicate when they're dealing with someone of our community. And so just thank you all again for being here. Please look forward to more of these type webinars with these type of strong discussions, powerful discussions in the future. If Ivory and Kizzy does Ivory and Kizzy have anything to say? Do you guys want to leave it with anything?
Thank you so much for having me. If anyone wants to get in contact, I'm available, and you can reach out to Raquel too if you don't remember how to do that. But I love the opportunity to talk and get to know people and to extend any resources that I can.
Yeah, just thank you so much to all of you for your work. And there's so many advocates on the call. Thank you for your work. It takes all of us to improve the lives of this community. And so just thank you for your work. Thank you, Raquel, and Fostering Media Connections, for inviting me today and for creating a platform so we can have this conversation. And I definitely look forward to staying in touch with anyone who would like to stay in touch with me. My contact information was in the chat, or like Ivory said, you could reach out to Raquel. So thank you, Raquel. I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. And so thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kizzy. I appreciate you. I remember when really quickly, when I used to be in college, Kizzy used to always tell me, like, you got to make it because you're gonna be a part of my success story. And so if I'm successful, then that means that she's successful. And she always used to tell me that, and that stuck with me. And so now it's my turn to follow in the footsteps and reach back into the community. And so just thank you guys for being here today. I feel like I'm getting teary-eyed, so I want to end this before I start crying. If anyone needs to get in touch with me, I drop my email in the chat. Ivory and Dr. Kizzy Lopez information is also available. You can reach out to me if you missed anything. This webinar is being recorded, so we will definitely be floating it back if you would like to send it to someone who possibly missed it and you think that they would enjoy the opportunity to rewatch this over again. With that being said, everybody have a beautiful Friday. Enjoy your weekend, and I look forward to seeing you guys the next time. Goodbye.